This is Cruise Radio.
Cruise Radio is brought to you in part by tripinsurance.com. Travel insurance done right by the people who know travel insurance. Get a quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida.
This is
Cruise Radio.
Cruise Radio. About a month ago, Fiona and her husband sailed a transatlantic voyage. It was a repositioning cruise aboard Celebrity Apex from Southampton to Port Everglades down in Fort Lauderdale. This was her first transatlantic cruise. Welcome to the show, Fiona. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Doug. It's nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you offering to do this today. Before we get to the ship itself, as we always do, we're going to take a step back. As you mentioned before we started recording, you live just north of London. So give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to hop on this ship down in Southampton and take it over to the U.S.?
Yeah, well, we've cruised quite a lot in various destinations. We've certainly sailed in around the Caribbean. We've sailed around the Mediterranean and also the South Pacific a few years ago. And we love our cruising, but we'd never done a transatlantic. And we had the opportunity to take a little bit of holiday in the run up to Christmas. We didn't know what to do. And my husband said, let's do a transatlantic. I think we should do one at least once and try it. So we last cruised in February on the Beyond around the Southern Caribbean, and we just loved the Edge class ship. You know, we really liked it. So when we saw the Apex was doing a transatlantic in October, we decided to give it a go.
Now, jumping feet first into a transatlantic, having never done one before, were you kind of skeptical about all the sea days back to back to back to back?
Well, you know, I love a sea day, Doug. And I make people laugh because I always say I look forward to the sea days pretty much as much as the port days. Actually looking forward to the sea days, a little bit nervous about any motion from the ocean. And I'd had some warning from a couple of friends and my family saying, you know, it could be rough. So I was a bit nervous about that. But in the end, it was really not too bad at all.
Yeah, that could be a fun time to cross in October and November for sure. With those seas, the North Atlantic can get pretty nasty sometimes. So since you live just north of London, like getting down to Southampton to embark, is that a day trip for you, or do you go in the night before and then embark the next day?
No, not at all. Our country's so little compared to yours. No, it's probably a 2.5 hour trip for us. We'd normally drive, but because we were sailing from Southampton and flying back into London, that was didn't work too well. So in fact, we went by train, which meant going into central London. That's only 30 minutes from us, and then we swapped out to another train, and that was about an hour's journey down to Southampton. So really pretty straightforward, actually, no problem. And I think it's the first time we've boarded a cruise ship and not been jet lagged.
Nice.
Which was a nice novelty.
I'm sure you make your way to Southampton and you go to embark Celebrity Apex. They have a beautiful terminal down there. So how was the embarkation process for y'all? And how long did it take you from the curb to get on the ship?
So from the curb to the ship, I have to say our experience of the cruise terminal wasn't great. The lines were pretty long and they had that kind of windy setup, you know, like you get at Disney when there's lots of people queuing. People were a little bit grumpy in the queues because obviously you're hyped up, you've got to the terminal, you want to get on the ship. And people were grumbling. I think immigration took a long time because they were very thorough about checking the visas for everybody traveling, the ESTAs, and it was slow. So even so, I would say it's probably about an hour from, you know, curb to getting on board the ship. Not as slick as Fort Lauderdale when we board generally.
I want to ask you, and pardon my ignorance here, but since the UK pulled out of the EU, has immigration changed or is it about the same still?
Well, in my experience, it's about the same. We travel quite a lot in Europe, actually. We've got an RV and we travel over to France quite a lot and sometimes to Spain. And it's really not so bad. I think at peak times at the airports, it can be a bit slower, but the facial recognition and, you know, all of that stuff seems to work pretty well. So no, it's not impacted us personally.
Once you boarded Celebrity Apex, what were your first impressions? I mean, she's only a couple of years old at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've always found Celebrity pretty good. The staff are very welcoming. It's easy to find your way around the ship. Everywhere looks very clean. As you say, it's a pretty new ship, and it was very much as we expected. Well signposted and easy to find your way around. It was quiet at first, but we always choose the earliest boarding we can get. So we like that. We like to get on board early and start the cruise experience. Was
the ship at capacity when you sailed it?
Yeah, almost. I believe the passenger capacity is around 2,900. And I think there were around 2,700 on board. So okay. It was fairly full.
I'm just thinking as you're saying that, one of the very first sailings back from the U.S. after COVID was I was on Celebrity Edge, and there were, I think, 400 or 500 people on the sailing. And it was like having your own yacht for 7 nights.
Fabulous. We did a cruise quite early on after COVID when they opened up, and we had a similar, I think the ship was about 40 or 50% capacity, so not quite as cool as yours, but it was very different, very nice.
Yeah, you make your way to your stateroom. What kind of stateroom did you book for this transatlantic crossing, and what did you think of it throughout the voyage?
So we booked an infinite veranda. It was deck 6 midships. So given that I was nervous about the possible rough seas, I thought that was quite good. Although when we booked, there was very little choice left. The stateroom's clean, it's spacious, good storage, lots of charging points and sockets, really spacious bathroom. I mean, we love the bathrooms on those ships, and they're very good. The infinite veranda, it's in this country we say it's a bit like Marmite, and that means some people love it, some people hate it. We enjoy the infinite veranda. We don't mind. We don't tend to sit out on our balcony as such. That's very much even in a hot climate. And given this is mainly a cool weather cruise, we were fine with kind of having extra space in the stateroom. But on the second and third nights when we hit, fairly rough seas, we were woken up lots of times with banging and rattling of the balcony window frame. And it was really a problem. I mean, by the second night of this, we were, a little bit fed up and jaded. And we spoke to staff, we recorded it on our phones, we had video, and it wasn't just the noise of the ship hitting the waves, it was the actual structure of the balcony window frame itself rattling and banging. So we spoke to staff. It took about 24 hours, but they found us an alternative stateroom, which was an infinite veranda on one deck above. And it was absolutely fine. It was like a completely different room. Even though the ship was just as rocky, it didn't make a noise. That's not a feature that we noticed at all when we cruised previously with this cabin. But I have to say, one of the ship's officers who was helping us to move, he said to me in an aside, I don't think these Edge class ships, the build quality is as good as the Solstice class, which I thought was really interesting. And he said, we have this problem from time to time with these cabins. So I thought that was quite an interesting thing. It's not something we've noticed before, but if you look online, people do talk about the rattling of that structure.
I am curious if you had the experience. I know it was a little cooler, and where you were in the world, you might not have had this issue. But did you have the issue of bringing the balcony or the window down and the whole cabin filling up with humidity?
When we were in the rougher seas, the captain can control the windows, as you know, onto the veranda there, and we couldn't open them at all for quite long parts of the cruise because of the rough weather and the wind, really. In terms of humidity, no, the room didn't get humid at all. We found it quite fine. So, it wasn't really a problem, and we didn't mind so much because we knew it was going to be a cooler cruise in terms of the weather. And so it was quite fine for us.
Let's talk about the food on this transatlantic voyage, and we'll go to the top at the Ocean View Cafe. How was the food up there in the buffet area?
Yeah, so we enjoyed it. We enjoyed the buffet. In the past, we've always found the buffet excellent. I think it's one of the best of the cruise lines that we've cruised with, certainly, with good choices. What I would say about this one, there were some negatives for us. It was busy. I mean, really busy, especially at peak times. And there seemed to be people staying at their tables for longer, perhaps, playing cards or just chatting, socializing. I think because there were so many sea days, so it could be difficult to find a table sometimes. The quality of the food, as always, was extremely good. And we enjoyed it. Something we just couldn't quite put our finger on, I would say that the variety and choices were not quite as good, perhaps, as we've had in the past. But I would say I'm being super picky because I'm so used to it being excellent.
I don't disagree with you. I think there's been also a change over the years, too, during the restart of maybe pulling back on quality a little bit across all the brands, not just Celebrity. You were talking about it being crowded, and I was going to ask you, I know on that Edge-class ship there, kind of in the aft area, you have that outside patio with seating as well. Did that seem to fill up, or was the weather too inclement to go out there?
There were some days when it was too inclement, and I would say that's my absolute favorite tip. I love going out the back there in the fresh air and getting a table outside whenever we could, and the weather was good enough. But I would say it was probably 5 or 6 days into the cruise before we were hitting the kind of weather that was, the winds had dropped, the waves had dropped, and the temperature had come up enough that we could sit outside to eat. But that's definitely my favorite place to eat if we're in the buffet.
Now, Celebrity's main dining room, I guess we'll call it dining rooms. It's the 3 of them. I believe it's Normandy, Tuscan, and Cosmo, if I'm correct here. How was your experience in the main dining rooms? And how do you set up the rotation? Do you just pick one and stick with it the entire voyage, or can you rotate if you'd like?
Yeah, I think you can certainly rotate, and that's what we were doing. And we rotated at a whim, let's take a look at Cosmopolitan tonight. Let's try Normandy. I think the other one is Cyprus. So we could do that, and we had anytime dining. They always managed to fit us in. I talked to my husband because we were reflecting about what we thought about main dining. The tables are packed in, and the rooms were really busy in the evening. And a couple of times, service could be quite slow. So you had to be, it's a little bit unpredictable, like that. The quality of the food generally is pretty good. But again, choice is limited, and the style, as I'm sure you know, of those restaurants is you have the set menu, which is pretty much the same as it would have been in the main dining, but then each restaurant has its own 2 or 3 starters and entrees, that are particular perhaps to that area that it's representing. It was okay. The food was all right. If we'd had to depend just on the main dining, both of us would have, not enjoyed it so much. Certainly my husband is pescatarian, so he doesn't eat meat, but he eats fish. And he sometimes found the choices quite limited in the main dining room.
Did you do any specialty dining on this voyage?
We did, and we booked more specialty dining than we usually do. Generally on a 12 or 14 night voyage, we'd probably book a couple, but in fact we had 4 specialty dining meals. I think because we had so much on board time, compared to usual, so we really wanted to max out the opportunity to try the specialty restaurants.
Does Celebrity have any kind of packages you can buy before you set sail to whether a reduced price for 3, 4, or 5 nights or what have you?
Yeah, they do. So it's roughly around $250 per person for 4 nights. So as a couple, that's $500 for 4 meals, and that's our main gripe, really. We go back, a lot of years, and a lot of years ago is obviously a lot less cost, and that's just the way it is. But gosh, it feels expensive now to have specialty dining. When you consider that you've essentially paid for your food on your cruise already, you accept you're going to pay extra for specialty dining, but an extra $50, $60, $80 for a meal feels like a lot. So I suppose your expectations are going to be pretty high when you're paying that much extra.
There's like a grab and go type, I guess we'll call it a deli back there by Eden. Did you get to dine there at all and check that place out, the soups and sandwiches?
So we did. We had breakfast in Eden a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. And actually, sometimes when we had got a gym class or something like that, and then we just wanted to have something quick and fairly healthy, we would go there. And it was nice. It feels clean. It feels fresh. It's a nice environment in Eden. And so they do wraps. They were doing very nice sort of muesli, granola, overnight oats, yogurts and pastries. So yeah, that's nice. Limited, but very nice.
Were the crowds less than like, up in the Ocean Cafe for the buffet area?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a very small venue and very limited. So I think if you know what you want and it's there, and people didn't tend to linger. They would come and grab something, grab a coffee and be gone in sort of 15, 20 minutes. So that the turnover was probably a little bit better than it was in the other buffet.
Yeah. How was the entertainment on this transatlantic voyage? And did anything repeat itself because of so many nights?
No, there wasn't any repetition at all, which we were really impressed about, actually. I mean, the entertainment, we would say, was one of our highlights. The main theatre shows were very good. The production shows were excellent, very creative, lots of skills. Individual performers were very good. We had some great individual artists come, but it was very difficult to get a seat. If you arrived 5, sometimes 10 minutes before a performance, you'd have to stand. That you really would. I mean, you'd have to be there a solid 20 minutes before to get a reasonable seat. So production shows very popular.
Were they not doing 2 shows, or was it just because of the way your dining timed out?
No, both shows were packed out.
Wow.
They did do 2 shows. I think 7 and 9, something like that. And they were, we tried both, and they were both very, very busy. So, yeah.
Interesting. Any like nighttime entertainment, whether, going to Eden or you have that centrum, that atrium area right there with some music sometime, any kind of comedy shows or anything else you hit throughout the ship outside of the theater?
So there were shows, there were some, various musicians, duos, a band, and really, there were no standouts for us. They were okay to have in the background if you were having a drink or a coffee and people watching, but not anyone else that I would go and just sit and listen to. But they were in Eden. They were in the plaza, in the main bit by the Martini bar there. Nice background, but nothing amazing. Yeah.
I'm only curious here, like, have you ever been on a cruise where you're like, oh my gosh, we have to go watch them perform at 7 tonight because they're so good? Like for me, music on cruise ships is typically just background fodder, like you were saying. But have you ever had one that really stuck out to you?
I would say the last couple of cruises, excluding this one, there were a couple of vocalists with guitars that were really quite fun, interacted with the audiences in the bars or in the areas where they were performing, and really worth listening to. Really, really nice for half an hour while you're having a cocktail or whatever before dinner. But there wasn't really anything stand out with these. But yeah, previously we've had some good performers.
What is the programming like in Eden at nighttime now? I know when that ship first launched with Celebrity Edge, that class rather, it was kind of, I don't know if we'll call it risque or kind of bizarre or whatever you want to. Risque is a bad word, maybe bizarre. What is it like now in Eden at nighttime?
To be honest, we didn't see much of the shows that were in there, but certainly it feels like it has, and it's not a pun, it has a bit of an edge to it. It's edgy, isn't it? There's something a little bit unusual, a little bit different, a bit carnival about it. And so we caught a couple of them, and it is a different atmosphere in Eden. I have to say we really enjoyed it, and it was stand out our favourite specialty restaurant as well. We went twice. I mean, Eden's just a lovely space, I think. Lovely space to spend some time in.
How were the sea days in terms of crowds and congestion throughout your voyage?
Well, this was our first cool weather cruise, and I think I anticipated it would be busy inside the ship, and goodness, I wasn't wrong. I think it was busy. Clearly, Celebrity and the crew worked very hard to give lots of entertainment and activities in lots of venues around the ship. Nevertheless, there were sort of choke points where it just felt like, gosh, you could hardly move for people around Cafe Bacci, which is very popular, and people come and get their coffee and their pastry and grab a table and sit and people watch. And it felt very, very busy, You were very aware there were a lot of people on the ship. What I would say is that as I say, there was a lot of entertainment and activities. There were drawing classes, wine tastings, musical bingo, all of that kind of stuff, meditation. And they worked hard to keep it going. I have to say the enrichment program was excellent. Really enjoyed it. Big shout out to Larry Hess, who was a really popular speaker talking about the Beatles and their music, James Bond movies and the music. And, he was packed out every day in the theatre whenever he gave a talk, and people really seemed to enjoy that. So the enrichment program and some of the other classes, the trivia, they were fun, but you had to get in early. I did yoga and Pilates every day, and that was $99 for an unlimited package. And I thought that was really good value and great instruction. So, we filled our time but by the end of the third, fourth, fifth sea day, we were ready to get our feet on dry land for a change of scene.
I was actually just thinking as you were speaking, like if you're a lecturer, you have to kind of get ready for the long haul on one of those transatlantic crossings, because you're not hopping on and off like the comedians do in the Caribbean. No. And he became, and there was another chap called Andrew Jarrett, who was the tournament referee at Wimbledon, the big tennis tournament in the UK for years. And both of them became quite familiar, friendly faces around the ship, and I felt for them because they were often being, stopped and people saying, "Oh, I really enjoyed this. Can I ask you a quick question?" So, but that was quite nice, we really got to know them, and, but as you say, they earned their money. That's for sure. The casino is located on the lower decks of the ship. I'm curious, I know it's a smoke-free environment, but was it packed through the voyage?
Oh, we visited 2 or 3 times, and it was pretty quiet, I would say. Mm-hmm. Maybe we didn't tend to go later in the evening. So maybe later in the evening, I'm talking after 9 p.m., 10 p.m., maybe it got busier then. But although there were always a few people in there, we never saw it really busy. I really enjoy the casino. I really enjoy blackjack. I'm very much a novice, and I would commend the casino and the dealers really for creating quite a relaxed environment for a novice player. We had some free plays with our elite status. Nice. And we were happy to use them, and we had some fun. For an hour or 2 or 3 evenings, we enjoyed the casino very much.
I'm curious if you've noticed the mix of demographic. You live in the UK, of course. You took it over here, and then you flew home back to London. Did you notice the opposite of North Americans starting there and ending here?
Well, I would say that the mix of passengers, I expected a lot of UK sort of passengers, handful of Europeans. In fact, I would say the demographic of the passengers that, in our experience, was pretty much the same as we get on most of our celebrity cruises. So probably a lot of Americans. Many of them seem to have done trips within the UK or around Europe, and then were taking, the slow boat home, which is quite a nice way to end a trip, I guess. It becomes part of your holiday, doesn't it? So quite a lot. A few Brits, a few Europeans, but I would say it was a standard demographic of passengers, really.
And another question, pardon my ignorance, but isn't there a difference in gratuity culture booking from the UK than it is like for us booking?
Oh, yes, it is. We're very different about that. So what we do, we've become more aware in recent years that tipping really is absolutely expected. We've always understood that in the UK about the cruise industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we totally get that. But what we like to do, and I think the tendency in the UK for passengers booking from this side of the Atlantic is we book a package with our Wi-Fi, our tips, and generally our drinks included. So we book a package with obviously a higher price, but for that they take a set amount every day, depending on the type of stateroom that you book. You will have included in your booking the tips. What we've always done, myself and my husband, we always tip our staff that have looked after us personally. So obviously our cabin steward, maybe a sommelier, a waitress or a waiter, people that we've come across that we thought, yeah, they've done a great job. So we tip them some cash separately as well.
Good insight there. Thank you for that. So you leave Southampton, you have a few days at sea. What was your first port of call?
So after 4 nights, the first port of call was Ponta Delgada in the Azores, which is Portuguese, known for being a sort of fairly lush island with some mountainous areas and lakes. We didn't take a tour. We decided to take our own little tour around the capital, which we quite enjoyed doing. We just like to explore, maybe talk to some local people, just get a feel ourselves for what's going on. I would have liked to have done the wildlife tour from the harbour with whale spotting, but I tell you, I couldn't have got on another boat at that time. I was happy to walk around and, take a look. So we took a little tourist train, and, I usually find these very good when I'm abroad, just the little tiny trains that can take you around and about. And I think it's quite a good way to see a new place quite quickly. You get a feel for it. Well, it was terrible. It was squeaky and rattly. You couldn't hear the commentary at all. And we just seemed to go around tiny little back streets. So we didn't rate that, but it was quite funny. But then we found a beautiful church just off the main square, which was absolutely stunning. It was breathtaking. And then we found an old military fort and a museum with lots of history, what had gone on in the Azores, and great views of the port from high up on the castle walls, all free of charge. So we really enjoyed that, actually.
Okay, so a little mix there. What was up after the Azores? 5
sea days. And then the second and last port of call before Fort Lauderdale was King's Wharf in Bermuda. We hadn't been to Bermuda before, and we were really excited. And in fact, we were extra excited because a day or two out from Bermuda, the sun came out, the seas got calmer, it was a lot warmer, and we could enjoy the outside spaces on the ship. But Bermuda's a gorgeous island. We sort of fell in love with it, really, even though it was only a day's visit. We wanted to do our own thing. We'd read up about the island, and we got a local taxi to Horseshoe Beach, which is, supposedly one of the best beaches with pink sand. And in fact, you pick up the sand in your hand and you look closely at it. There are lots of tiny, very pale pink crystals that just overall could persuade you that it's pink. It's very, very, very pretty. And we found a lovely quiet beach. I did a bit of yoga on the edge of the water, which was lovely. And we snorkeled a bit, and it was just great. And a bonus to us, we always try to use local taxi drivers, and we're generally blessed with very good, friendly people. And you can learn so much about an island and the life there, what it's like for the people and their background, just in that 20-minute taxi journey. And it really, it feels nice to share that kind of that information with people and hear what's going on. So yeah, we enjoyed that. And we got back to the dock area. It's very nice, typical kind of touristy shopping, some bars and restaurants. So we bought the obligatory T-shirts and things like that for folks back home. Yeah, it was really nice. I think we might go back to Bermuda.
Did they tell you why the sand is pink?
No, they didn't.
I asked a couple of years ago when I was there, and I was told it's because it's white quartz sand that's mixed with the crust shells, and it gives it that pink tint.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
that's very lovely, isn't it? Well, I was surprised. I thought it might be mythical, but in fact, I was very convinced that it was pink. It's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah, it
could
definitely
recommend.
is pink. Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Winding down here, how many sea days until you hit Port Everglades?
It was 2 sea days and then straight into Fort Lauderdale. But those sea days were somehow much nicer. They felt sweeter because we could be outside, we could be by the pool. The band was set up by the pool. It kind of felt like, oh, this was the holiday we've come for.
Yeah.
The whirlpools were in action, and the sunset bar and the gardens. So they were two better sea days, I would say. But yeah, 2 sea days and then straight into Fort Lauderdale.
Did you get a chance to dine at the rooftop?
No, we had booked this time, but in fact we switched it out, I think, for a second night at Eden, because we'd enjoyed it so much. And the rooftop grill was pretty much out of action until, I think, 3 or 4 days before we got into Fort Lauderdale. So, yeah.
We didn't even talk about specialty dining. I forgot all about that as we were talking into the conversation here. So let's back up. Yeah, you mentioned Eden. How was Eden presented? I think I've dined there 3 times, and every time it's been a different menu, but it seems like the space has always been evolving. So what was your take on this?
Well, we are big fans of Eden. I think it's hands down the best restaurant on the ship. We loved it. I think the menu's 5-star, exceptional flavor combinations, very imaginative. It's very atmospheric, which helps, not only because you've got the lush plants hanging down and the beautiful colors and the space, you've got the big windows looking out over the wake. You can see the chefs at work, for my husband, certainly great fish choices. So it was, really lovely. And the waiters, the waiting staff are very informed, very good information about the menu. And you can take, a couple of the entrees, a couple of the starters if you want. They were very relaxed about that. I had one gripe. It didn't spoil it for me, but I've heard and read this on other reviews actually about Celebrity recently. They didn't bring the wine list. And the sommelier came over, asked what sort of wine I'd like. And I said, actually, could I see the wine list? So it was brought to me, and then we had the premium drinks package. I requested one of the wines that was on the list, and he just said, well, I don't have that. And I said, oh. So I was a little bit disappointed. He said, but I've got something I think you'll like. So he brought me an alternative wine, and it was very nice. So that was fine. I had that a couple of times, and I felt that, maybe they're just being a little bit more careful. I think if you're going to have a wine on your wine list, make it available to your guests, really. That was a slight disappointment. Didn't spoil it for me, but I noticed it.
You are the second celebrity cruiser in a month that had that issue regarding the drink and wine menu. Yeah.
I think I heard that review, and I immediately reflected back to my experience, and I thought, that sounds familiar. So, one to look out for, really.
After your 2 nights in Eden, did you do any other specialties?
We did. We tried Le Petit Chef, which we hadn't done before, and I'd resisted it previously. But we just thought, let's try it. I have to say the concept was actually really clever, and it made me laugh. It was fun. The restaurant was probably only a quarter full, so the atmosphere wasn't lively. It was quite quiet. The food was good, but as my husband and I said, it was fun. The food was good. It was okay. I wouldn't do it again. I just got the feeling that they were struggling to fill the places a little bit.
La Petite Chef is one of those one and done type restaurants because it is cute. You have the table animation, the chef running around flipping meatballs on the plates, and you gotta have to just actually see it to even understand what it's all about. But it's funny, whimsical. I guess that could be a word.
Yeah, it was whimsical. It was fun. I'm sure kids would love it, and I enjoyed it. And I'm not big on cartoons and that stuff. I think I'm fairly serious about my food, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was a one-off. That was my view about that. The other specialty we tried was the Fine Cut Steakhouse. We haven't eaten there before. Excellent service, great food, lovely atmosphere, delicious. Delicious. I would say I don't know where the food is cooked there. I'm guessing it comes up from the main kitchens, but it was a little bit cool. Some of our dishes were a bit on the cool side, and a couple of tables I saw were sending their food back because it wasn't warm enough. So that was unfortunate because, the staff are working hard and I felt sorry for them. But when you're paying a lot of extra money for your specialty, you do want it to be right.
Twice or three times we've dined there at Fine Cut, and you could hear all the chaos and the commotion happening from the atrium, whether, they're flipping the martini bottle or the booze up in the air. And it's kind of really loud. And if you were in there trying to have like a romantic evening, I could see where it could bother you. Was that an issue still?
I could hear it in the background. Mm-hmm. We were right against the windows on the far side, so probably wouldn't have been as noticeable. But if you were nearer that side of the atrium, I'm sure you would have heard it because we could hear some noise, certainly. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so you make your way to Port Everglades. The cruise is winding down. How was your debark process?
It was pretty good. You don't feel rushed with celebrity. We took our time. We had our own cases to carry off. We didn't have a celebrity transfer, so we just had breakfast and went. But I think, once you know you've got a longish journey to do ahead of you, you really just want to start the process of getting on with it. So we took our cases. It was really very slow through immigration. I'd say the slowest we've ever had. And lots of folks were complaining in the line. And I think they didn't have many of the booths open. So there seemed to be 2 or 3 that weren't manned. I don't know what that was about, but, you just got to stick with it, haven't you? It is what it is. But I would say it took us probably a good hour to get through immigration. But other than that, it was absolutely fine. Yeah, no problem at all.
Debark is already, sad enough without waiting in another line,
Doug, some of the problem is when you come back from a cruise that started out in the US, practically everybody who's coming back in has already been in the US.
Yeah.
So do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're entering as a first time, I think maybe they're just extra careful. I don't know,
Yeah. Maybe grandma has some spices packed away that the dog sniffed, or some jerky, buffalo jerky or something. Yeah, it's all.
You just don't know what people are going to bring back.
Yeah, I've seen it all, swords and everything.
Oh, yeah.
So you're off the ship. Any first time tips to offer someone sailing Celebrity Apex?
A couple really. I would say if you want to see the shows, get there early. 20 minutes plus. A few first time tips actually. I would also say get the premium Wi-Fi, because the standard Wi-Fi, particularly mid-Atlantic, was non-existent. Mm-hmm. So we had to get the premium, which costs you. But if you can't live without being online at least some of the time, then you've just got to take the pain for that. Mm-hmm. And I would also say really, really explore the ship early in your cruise so you don't miss out. It's really tough to discover the very nice spaces that there are on your last couple of days of the cruise. So the roof garden, the sunset bar, and there are a lot that are tucked away. So that's something you don't want to miss out on, particularly on this ship,
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
Well, I would say we do love our food, and I would say the dinners in Eden, absolutely, absolutely worth it. Stand out, excellent food wherever you eat, and we've eaten in some very nice places in the world. I would say they've got that absolutely right. And the shows were really very good. We enjoyed them. We felt, they were great. So yeah, those were our highlights.
So the sea days were touch and go for you. So I have to ask, would you do another transatlantic?
We wouldn't do another transatlantic, Doug. No, we wouldn't. I think we love cruising, and we've loved our sea days previously. I think because it's a couple of days when you get to breathe and just be and not have to rush anywhere. But I think we realised that 8 sea days, particularly in a cool climate, when you can't be outside so much as well, it's a lot. And we love cruising, but it's a fun and enjoyable way to get from A to B. But it's not all about the ship, It's fun, but it's fun to have some time in the middle doing other things as well.
Well, in closing here, your final thoughts of Celebrity Apex.
Celebrity, I think, still have a great product, and you have to pick a cruise line for you. You pick a cruise that suits you, and we're all different. We really enjoy it. We enjoy the Edge class, but we saw a few things that just weren't quite up to our expectations. Maybe the variety of the food. You know, the staff seemed really a little tired by the end at times, and, you know, that long transatlantic crossing with passengers in your face for all those days is a lot, I'm sure. And the cost of specialty dining, you know, they're really, I think my view is they're as high as they can go at the moment, and they need to keep the standard really good if people are going to continue to pay that. But overall, we're still Celebrity fans, you know, really nice product, beautiful ship. Who doesn't love to cruise? But maybe just not the Transatlantic.
We've been talking with Fiona about her 12-night transatlantic crossing aboard Celebrity Apex. Thank you so much for sharing your vacation with us.
Oh, thanks, Doug. It's been a real pleasure. And keep up the great work. We love your program.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,